It's starting to get a little stressful. Despite his kindness and friendliness, Keith Urban is cautious. He is aware of what will occur. Despite changes in the entertainment industry, Keith Urban has never been one to adapt. For years, fans have adored his singing, charisma, and distinct style. But a curious thing began to happen not long ago. Even his most loyal admirers have been taken aback by this. Once discussed themes have evolved into news stories, and commonplace observations have gained popularity. What the devil is happening to Keith Urban? This is not how I was raised. That implies that our girls are extremely fortunate to have you as a teacher, sweetie. I'm learning, too. We are witnessing a man transform into someone we believe to be very familiar. This move raises a number of contentious issues, and people are eager to learn more. From a young man from a small New Zealand village, Keith Urban rose to fame as a country music artist. His transformation from new faces to country icon is remarkable and inspirational. On October 26, 1967, Keith Leonel Urban was born in Wangare, New Zealand. He played music for the first time while growing up in Australia. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing content. And hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Now, back to the topic. What we were talking about was, early on, he demonstrated that he was a born actor who belonged on stage. His early passion for country music, in particular, set him apart in a setting where that genre was uncommon. On the other side, his devotion would ultimately propel him to the global arena. When Keith Urban appeared on the Australian talent show New Faces in 1983, he made his first significant impression on the entertainment industry at a young age. Despite the fact that he was still in his teens, many noticed his charisma and his skill as a guitarist. Although it was a little step, it was significant since it marked the beginning of his early singing career and inspired him to develop his abilities even more. In 1991, Urban made a decision that forever altered his life. He traveled to Nashville, Tennessee, the birthplace of country music. Although moving to the US from Australia wasn't simple, it was essential for his business to expand. He joined the Nashville scene, where he honed his songwriting skills and established connections that would eventually lead to his fame. Being bold was rewarded. In 1999, 8 years later, Keith released his first album in the US, titled simply Keith Urban. It was his first release in the United States and included a blend of rock and country soul. It would turn into his trademark sound. He became a true rising star in country music as one of his greatest songs, But for the Grace of God, shot straight to the top of the charts. Everyone was aware of Urban's brilliance when he took home the Academy of Country Music Awards Top New Male Performer trophy in 2001. It was a tribute to his singing abilities as well as to his perseverance and hard work since coming to Nashville. He continued to accelerate. His 2002 album Golden Road featured singles like Somebody Like You and You'll Think of Me. These songs helped him get more admirers and demonstrated his ability to write songs that were both popular and poignant. He received his first Grammy Award in 2004 for You'll Think of Me, which was for Best Male Country Vocal Performance. For any artist, this is a major event. With the release of the album Be Here in 2005, Urban's career took off. It received multiple accolades from the Academy of Country Music (ACM) and the Country Music Association (CMA), and had a number of singles. By this time, Keith Urban was more than simply a famous performer. In the genre, he was now a well-known figure. However, 2006 was a year that would profoundly alter Urban's life on both an emotional and professional level. On June 25, 2006, they were married in Sydney, Australia. Nicole Kidman is a well-known performer. Two well-known figures from various facets of the entertainment world met at the wedding. It soon rose to prominence as one of the most talked-about celebrity partnerships. They would go on to have one of Hollywood's longest-lasting relationships, which gave them both a sense of stability. In 2008, Urban and Kidman welcomed a daughter, Sunday Rose Kidman Urban, into the world. The birth of his daughter altered Keith's life. He now has to juggle his hectic music career with being a father. 2 years later, in 2010, he released the album Get Closer, which focused on family, love, and connection. Urban demonstrated his ongoing commitment to his work and worthy causes by attending numerous major award shows and benefit concerts that year. In 2011, their second daughter, Faith Margaret, was born via surrogacy. The family grew as a result. Urban has frequently discussed in public how becoming a father transformed him, helping him become more grounded mentally, and aided in his personal and musical development. From 2012 until 2016, Keith Urban worked as a judge on American Idol. He contributed a refreshing blend of intelligence, honesty, and comedy while he was there. He received recognition for his sincere encouragement of budding talent and his insightful criticism. Fans were able to witness a different side of him that was kind and community-focused, which perfectly matched his character. Urban returned to music in 2013 with the album Fuse, which had singles like Cop Car and We Were Us. While staying loyal to his roots, Urban experimented with new sounds on the album. While maintaining the interest of his core fan base, he continued to alter his songs. Urban also had a significant year in 2016 because he started Ripcord, which led to a global tour. He sought to stretch the boundaries of his creativity, as evidenced by the record's pop, country, and electronic music. The show proved that he is a top-tier talent and made a lot of money. 2 years later, in 2018, he released Graffiti You, a deeply intimate album that delves deeper into themes of expression, identity, and love. He took the Entertainer of the Year, one of the biggest honors in country music, from the CMA Awards that same year. It demonstrated not only his talent but also his significant impact on the company. Keith Urban took over as presenter of the Academy of Country Music (ACM) Awards in 2020 when COVID-19 broke out. The event had to adapt to the new circumstances. During periods of transition, his consistent presence in the virtual format provided fans with comfort and consistency. Between 2021 and 2023, Urban continued to develop new concepts. Fans traveled from all over the world to see his intimate performances, which were filled with amazing music and anecdotes, after he began doing Las Vegas on a regular basis. In order to adapt his performance style to the demands of a constantly shifting music scene, he also recorded new songs and kept himself occupied. A lot of controversy was caused by Keith Urban's case. Although Keith Urban has accomplished a lot in his business and personal life, there have also been many unforeseen issues along the way. This type of occurrence occurred outside of award shows, concert tours, and music charts in 2007. Urban became embroiled in a novel legal lawsuit that year that had little to do with music and everything to do with how individuals view themselves in an ever-expanding digital world. The seemingly straightforward question of who owned the domain name Keith Urban was at the center of the dispute. As a well-known individual, many believed it was obvious that Keith Urban would be the owner of the rights to a website using his name. However, the situation was far more intricate than that. This resulted in a court case that garnered a lot of attention due to the peculiar circumstances and the individuals involved. During that period, the domain name Keith Urban was created. The website was not operated by Grammy-winning country music artist Keith Urban. Rather, it was a New Jersey painter of the same name. The brand was used by the painter to promote and market his own unique artwork, which had nothing to do with the music industry or the celebrity world. He posted drawings, art commentary, and studio information on his website. Initially, it appeared that no one was attempting to mimic the artist or capitalize on his notoriety. Nevertheless, the singer's similar names led to an increasing number of misunderstandings as her celebrity developed. The country star's official website frequently directed fans, journalists, and music industry professionals to a page that promoted art rather than music. Such dishonesty was a major issue for a well-known individual leading an increasingly international brand. It became evident that something needed to be done as the turmoil increased. In order to legally regain the domain name, musician Keith Urban decided to go to court. He invoked trademark law to defend his rights in a federal court. He argued that, at least in the domains of entertainment, music, and corporate branding, his name had established itself as a well-known and protected property. The painter allegedly used Keith Urban in the case. Forged a misleading connection that could harm or damage the musician's brand, infringing on his rights. According to court documents, the singer intended to take control of the website and prevent the painter from using the moniker. However, from the perspective of the painter, things appeared rather different. He argued that he had legitimately registered the domain name long before the musician formally claimed it. He claimed that he wasn't attempting to deceive anyone or profit from the singer's notoriety, and that he was merely using her name lawfully to advertise his own work. Since it was his official name and the foundation of his business, the painter made it apparent in court filings and public statements that he, too, had the right to operate under his own name. His reasoning raised more significant concerns regarding the rights of name-sharing parties and the harmony between personal freedom and trademark law. Nicole Kidman was knocked down by paparazzi. The 2007 dispute over Keith Urban's internet identity revealed some of the difficult issues that celebrities face offstage. Determining who was legally entitled to a name, however, was only one aspect of a larger issue. The Snoopy world of photographers was another continual strain that Keith Urban and his wife, actress Nicole Kidman, were more susceptible to as their fame grew. Despite their well-known careers, Keith and Nicole have kept their personal lives relatively private. However, it became more difficult to keep outsiders from prying into their day-to-day activities, particularly when they were in public. Their relationships with paparazzi worsened significantly in the 2010s, particularly in Nicole's native Australia. It put their patience to the test and forced them to consider boundaries, security, and decency. The friendship between Keith and Nicole has long piqued people's interest. Following their 2006 wedding and for a considerable amount of time thereafter, they were primarily in the news. They were not only well known in their own right, but they also united two renowned musicians and filmmakers from two very different industries. Though tabloids and gossip columns made them the subject of numerous articles, fans nevertheless adored their love story and frequently wished for their happiness. Nearly all of the time, those who were interested in their relationship were ravenous for images and private details. Beyond red carpets and public gatherings, people frequently took notice of these items. Rather, it followed them on their daily travels, to restaurants, to airports, and on vacations. Keith and Nicole frequently found themselves in harsh light during moments that most people don't give much thought to. There were always a lot of paparazzi around when Nicole and Keith went out in public in cities like Sydney and Melbourne, where they are both well liked. The shooters would occasionally act irrationally to capture unguarded moments in order to acquire their shots. Things might soon get out of hand. The couple's personal space was frequently violated, and dozens of cameras were trained on them. Some photographers maintained a reasonable distance, but others did not. As time went on, the two began to notice a trend of individuals becoming increasingly hostile toward them. Boundaries were merely obstacles to the next exclusive photo in the eyes of these individuals. During these periods, which included verbal abuse and dangerously close confrontations, Keith and Nicole's emotions and thoughts were under a lot of stress. Things that ought to have been simple, like going inside a building or seeing a buddy, frequently became unpleasant or awkward situations. 2013 saw the most well-known of these incidents. Not in Australia, but in New York City. The streets were crowded and bustling. That day, Nicole Kidman was en route to her hotel. She had just departed from a fashion show. There were lots of people passing by and observing the path. Paparazzi were trailing behind to capture a photo of her departure, as usual. Among them was a photographer riding a bicycle. He was reportedly in a rush to grab a picture and rushed at her on the sidewalk rather than from a safe distance. It was a terrifying and unanticipated moment when the photographer struck Nicole and knocked her to the ground. She fell backward and briefly struck the ground. Although she was not seriously injured, the mishap was upsetting and embarrassing. It served as a tangible reminder of how easily photography can veer into danger. After her fall, Nicole felt horrible and didn't know what to do. Keith Urban, on the other hand, was not present when it happened but quickly found out. It struck him harder. Rumors and flashing cameras were no longer the focus. The issue was one of safety, room access, and the unnecessary risk of constant exposure. The story was widely reported in all major media channels immediately after it occurred. People started paying closer attention to how some paparazzi operate when a photo of a well-known woman being shoved over by a cameraman went viral. The event was discussed by those interested in celebrity culture, authorization, and public access restrictions in addition to those in the entertainment sector. Keith, who is renowned for his thoughtfulness and composure, responded thoughtfully and clearly. Speaking publicly about the incident, he expressed his disbelief at what had transpired and emphasized the significance of treating everyone with fundamental decency, regardless of their social standing. He didn't strike out or launch into a tirade of rage. Instead, he communicated a cool, straightforward message that was founded on the principle that respect and safety should never be sacrificed for a photo. Keith's response resonated with many people because they could hear the voice of someone who was tired of seeing his loved ones singled out. For him, this was not about avoiding attention. It was about establishing boundaries for when negligence becomes attentiveness. Nicole's contentious intervention between Nicole and Keith. It's possible that Nicole Kidman's 2013 encounter with the paparazzi highlighted the external pressures that Keith Urban and his spouse continue to experience as well-known individuals. However, there have also been extremely private altercations that took place behind closed doors. Some battles went unreported until after the fact. Only a few months after they exchanged vows, the most significant and defining of these occurrences took place, long before they were wedded. In 2006, Nicole Kidman was forced to confront a harsh reality about the guy she loved. This came shortly after what many believed to be the beginning of a picture-perfect marriage. She felt that something needed to be done immediately since Keith Urban was using narcotics once more. At the time, Keith and Nicole had only been married for 4 months. The wedding itself was a huge event in Sydney, Australia. It brought two well-known artists together and signaled the beginning of a fresh, optimistic phase in their lives. Their partnership appeared lovely and hopeful from the outside. The tale of the Oscar-winning actor and country music sensation captivated fans. These two wonderful folks found each other despite having quite diverse origins. They appeared to be a solid couple who would be content, well-balanced, and long-lived. Behind the smiles, the fancy parties, and the affectionate chats, however, lay a far more agonizing reality. One that reminded them both that love, no matter how powerful, must occasionally confront harsh realities. Keith Urban has previously been open about his battles with addiction. He discussed the impact it had on his life and career prior to his sobriety. His honesty was praised, and for a time it seemed that chapter of his life was over. However, overcoming addiction is a lifelong battle, and he subtly reverted to his old behaviors throughout the early years of his marriage. It was initially invisible to the outside world and perhaps even to those closest to him. Conversely, Nicole Kidman felt the changes and genuinely cared for and bonded to her husband. She was painfully certain that the man she had recently married was headed in the wrong direction after seeing the warning flags. Nicole didn't hold out hope that the return would go away on its own or wait for things to grow worse. Rather, she did something. She organized a rescue. To do what they did required courage, wisdom, and a great deal of love. Setting up an intervention is never simple, particularly when emotions are running high and there is a risk of alienating someone. Nicole, however, was aware of the gravity of the situation. Maintaining their marriage was not the only thing she cared about. It was for Keith's protection. She approached the issue head-on with a calm determination that demonstrated her genuine concern and lack of judgment. There was no other option. I was saved by it. Following the intervention, Keith consented to receive assistance. He visited the Betty Ford Center, one of the top rehabilitation facilities in the U.S. and a well-known resource for those struggling with addiction and drug misuse. Keith had to step away from everything for a moment, including his job, his responsibilities, and the spotlight. It was an honorable and courageous act. It also meant exposing himself and going through a process that would take a lot of mental effort, honesty, and accountability. Keith discussed Nicole Kidman. Only a few months into her marriage to Keith Urban, Nicole Kidman courageously intervened during a personal crisis in 2006. It was a tale that demonstrated her deep concern and the transformative power of love and support. It was just one of many instances in which Keith and Nicole demonstrated their strong regard for boundaries, particularly when it comes to protecting one another from damage both in public and privately. As their relationship developed, they realized how bothersome or inappropriate it could be for others to stare at them in public. Although they have both become accustomed to handling celebrity over the years, there have been instances where it was evident that the boundary between being interested and being impolite had been crossed. Keith Urban lost his temper as soon as someone asked him an embarrassing question about Nicole Kidman's movie roles during a radio interview. That was the end of the interview. During what was intended to be a routine promotional tour, the incident occurred. Like many artists, Keith was on the radio with a reporter, casually discussing his music, current endeavors, and personal opinions. However, in the middle of the chat, the tone shifted. To make a point, the host might have asked Keith a question that made people laugh or furious. What was his reaction when he saw Nicole perform intimate or private love scenes in her films? Most people would consider such a query to be intrusive at worst and awkward at best. For Keith, who is deeply concerned about his wife's career and personal life, the remark was not just impolite but also repulsive. The proximity was too near. Keith Urban didn't attempt to dismiss it with a joke or a show of sympathy. Rather, he made a decision that was very clear. He cut the conversation short. He didn't give a dramatic or angry response. It was the end. It was plain and peaceful. The meaning of the message was obvious. There were some topics that were off limits, and he wasn't going to comply merely to keep the conversation going. Setting boundaries has been a major aspect of Keith and Nicole's public lives, and this was just another instance. Even though the couple had already experienced a lot of storms and media attention, this episode strengthened their resolve that their relationship is not for the public to see, particularly when it involves disrespect or unwelcome intrusion. It may have been too much for many individuals. After all, a lot of celebrities choose to make jokes in order to dodge the embarrassing questions that they are frequently asked. However, Keith thought the event was more than a strange query. It was about respect. It was about being able to distinguish between genuine interest and hyperbole, between curiosity and indifference. He was able to recover control of an unsatisfactory situation by ending the talk. Keith had showed that kind of concern before, and it would not be the last time. There has always been a strong element of reciprocal defense in Nicole and his relationship. They defend one another when remarks made in public become offensive or irritating. In addition to learning how to set boundaries when necessary, they have also learned how to be courteous when others are paying attention to them. The purpose of this approach is not to be cold or secretive. It has to do with maintaining respect for both you and your partner. Keith's battle with drugs and his transformation. Keith Urban has been facing more personal and deeper challenges in addition to his music career. Much of his journey has been molded by this internal conflict. Keith developed an alcohol and steroid addiction toward the close of the 1990s and the start of the 2000s. When he first relocated to Nashville, he experienced early employment pressures, sought acceptance, and fell into a risky drug-using cycle. He has later acknowledged that cocaine was his preferred drug and that his drinking frequently got out of control. He himself stated, "The end of the 1990s was a chaotic time marked by binge drinking and drug use that left him emotionally and physically drained." He had to alter his lifestyle as his notoriety increased, which made matters worse. When Keith checked himself into a Nashville rehab facility on his own in 1998, it was the first significant step toward his recovery. The person's addiction was evident at that point. He requested assistance since he realized that things were becoming out of control. However, as is sometimes the case with addiction, recovery was not simple. He had a much-needed respite during his 1998 stay in rehab, but the issues that were causing his drug usage weren't entirely resolved. Over time, he deviated from the regimen and eventually relapsed. Maintaining a successful music career wasn't simple. Keith was winning prizes, climbing the charts, and gaining more and more admirers. However, his battle with addiction continued behind the scenes. When he married Nicole Kidman in 2006, many believed he was past his troubles. However, just 4 months after their marriage, Keith failed once more. After that, he and Nicole both woke up. She intervened as soon as she saw how terrible things were and took a courageous and affectionate action that permanently altered their relationship. Later, Keith reflected on that occasion with great gratitude. He claimed that Nicole's assistance was a means of survival rather than a danger. She drew a line out of love, not wrath, and he understood it was time to take action. He once remarked on how fortunate he was that she intervened when she did.